Welcome to ShawTalk. I'm Tiffany Shaw, and I'm really excited today because we're not just bringing you a local celebrity, but an international motivational speaker, Hmong comedian, a community activist, and, well, most importantly, my friend, Tou Ger Bennet Xiong. Hi, Tou.
Hi, Tiffany. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming. I'm really excited. We haven't been able to catch up in a long time, and you have so many titles, I miss them. So why don't you just start and tell me, like, all the titles and what you're doing with them.
Okay, so the titles that I have accumulated over the years.
Right.
There's the first Hmong comedian. So if you Google Hmong comedian, you'll
Oh,
get
wait,
me.
really the first one ever?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of us,
Okay.
but I'm the only guy that gets paid for my jokes.
Okay,
so
that's
that makes me the
important.
official comedian.
Okay.
And then like motivational speaker, storyteller. Because I do some hip hop, growing up, I incorporate rap into my show. So rap artist is in there somewhere.
I love it.
And also when I do corporate gigs for diversity training, so diversity consultant, because then I could charge a little more for some of those corporate gigs. So yes, so those are some of the titles I've picked up over the years.
Well, and most importantly, and what I really wanted to give you a chance to chat about was recently, well, not even recently, but for a while, you've been a community activist, a huge, activist for the Hmong community, specifically here in Minnesota. And you've been doing a lot of work. What have you been doing? And I don't even want to butcher the name of the person, so I'm just going to let you tell us all about it.
Well, in addition to my job as a diversity consultant, so I go around and my regular shtick is going to schools, presenting at schools, colleges, doing diversity training, cultural performances. But on the side, that I don't get paid for this, my passion is also, social justice issues. I mean, growing here in Minnesota, where there's 80,000 plus Hmong Americans.
Which a lot of people don't realize isn't one of like the largest Hmong communities in the U.S.
Right here in Minnesota, we are one of the largest. People are like, why did you come from the hot tropical jungles and Laos to Minnesota? I said, ice fishing brought us here, right?
Really? No.
But really, at the time, there were a lot of state aid programs for refugee resettlement programs. And we came here as first generation refugees of war. And so the first wave came in. I came here with my family in '79, so and the community just kind of grew from there.
Right.
But as a new American community, just like the Somali American community or Spanish-speaking communities, we go through what they call new American issues, immigrant issues of assimilation, and part of that assimilation process is also dealing with discrimination, right? And racism, and like just adapting to a new culture and language barriers. So So a lot of my passion is working with new Americans who get caught up in the justice system where they don't know how to navigate, where if they had like certain violent crimes committed against them, and they don't know how to turn to the justice system and find the right help. So, and recently there was a situation in Wisconsin where a 64-year-old hunter who's a decorated vet during the war and fought with the Americans, he went on just a regular hunting trip like any other hunting trip that he's been doing for 20 years. And on this hunting trip, he encounters a white hunter in this little small town of Pepin, Wisconsin. And through some interaction, he ends up in the hospital with a grade 4 liver laceration. He was beaten and dragged across the cornfield and suffocated. And the family's like, what happened? What went wrong? And so it's sad. And
because it sounds like we really don't know the whole story.
So how can we get his story out?
Exactly.
And so so the family call and say, hey, I know you've worked with some of these families before. Can you help us out? And so I just say, okay, well, let me see what I can help you guys with. And so now we took the story and it went viral just literally a week and a half ago.
It's been all over your Facebook and videos have gone other places. Where could people find out a little bit more information about this?
They could just Google Sao Lu Vang, Hmong hunter in Pepin, Wisconsin, and you'll see all the news articles. And what's interesting about this case, Tiffany, is that it happened a month ago, November 5th, and up until last week, December 3rd, it took the district attorney an entire month to announce any charges against the perpetrator, given all the injuries that he sustained. And he was originally arrested, but released, at the request of the DA. And so the community is just sort of in awe, how could this happen, right? And why are you not charging the guy? I mean, he literally was, and the person who beat him happens to be 200 pounds, almost twice his size.
Much larger in stature.
Much larger,
person.
6 foot. The Sao Lu Vang, the Hmong hunter who did get beat, 64 years old, he's 117 pounds, and he's 5'3", right? And so there's lots of unanswered questions. The details of the case will come out, in the trial. But I think as a community, we need to watch these cases very closely to say,
Exactly.
hey, we deserve equal protection under the law like every other citizen. You know, we're not refugees and immigrants anymore. We're new Americans. You know,
Right. And many are citizens.
Right.
And
a lot
that's
of them are naturalized citizens.
Terribly difficult process.
Right.
So.
And then to this day, a lot of people don't even know this Hunter story. He actually, for a lot of people don't know, the Hmong people came to this country because we fought along with the Americans as their secret soldiers in the secret wars for Laos.
So he's a decorated veteran, and this is why, I mean, to me, when I first heard the story, and I was like, this doesn't really make sense, and why doesn't it have more attention, is that, you know, you kind of skimmed over it. They originally charged him, correct? Like, he had his own charges, and they dropped them. Yeah.
Well, now,
right? So was that just like a mix-up, or?
I think originally he got lost. But then they're throwing words in there. The landowners, you know, accused him of trespassing, and so he speaks limited English.
Right.
And he's a veteran hunter, and it's not like he's new. And before he went, two other people were in his party, and they say, "Hey, watch for signs, watch for fences." You know, and then of course, when you're hunting, there's no clear boundaries. You're gonna want to. People
and
get
even
lost
some of
all
those
the time.
fences get lost, and it's kind of hard. I mean,
but he said, "Hey, I'm sorry." The guy says, "No, you're going to jail, buddy." And he turns to walk away clearly, and he gets struck from the back, and he falls down. And so it's just, I mean, if you read the details, it's all over the internet. The police reports out, and so when I hear about these things, even though it's in a completely different state, I can't help but think, you know, what if that was my dad? You know, who loves to hunt? What if that was my uncle?
Exactly.
I mean, there's been stories. By the way, this is just one incident. In the past 20 years, there's many that are, some reported, many not reported.
Right.
And there's been stories of hunters who go hunting and who don't come home.
Right.
You know, and I'm saying to myself, wait, this is America. This is
where
hunting.
are they going? Why don't we care? Exactly.
Hunting, it's a sport. It's not even a contact sport. Why do people have to fear for their lives on a hunting trip? So, again, it's sad that some people out there still hold these beliefs of the other, you know? But that's why we as a community member need to just voice our opinion, and we work with law enforcement and DNR and just our public officials, say, what can we do to create a positive dialogue between and among different communities to improve our race relations.
Well, and you've done some pretty positive things, and they're all peaceful. So for people to understand that, you have helped organize some different groups in peacefully raising awareness. And one pretty one just last week. You want to tell me about that one?
Yeah. So last week, again, it's been almost a month. And so these college students were like, Tou Ger, we want you to, we're going to do this rally in this town because we deserve answers. And the community's been left in the dark. And so what's going on? And I said, you know, one way to get some answers is to stage a rally, a peace rally. Not a protest, because this came on the heels of the Ferguson case. So I kind of advised the students, you know, let's be mindful of our message. And they're like, let's go to that town. Let's make signs. I said, more power to you. And so within a period of 4 days, and given the technology, I mean, back when I graduated from college, we were rallying, but we were like, you know, making phone calls and letters. They did all this within a period of 4 days and 4 nights.
And how many people were all gathered in just those 4 days?
This coalition of college students from 6 or 7 campuses, like UW, Milwaukee, Madison, Eau Claire, Menominee. Literally, like we're up till 2 or 3 in the morning. Like, okay, you make the signs. You guys order the bus. You guys get the walkies. You guys come get the, you know, the first aid packet. You know.
So it was quite organized.
It was quite organized. But it was all. I was so amazed and inspired by these young people.
I can
and they said within 4 days, and this is in the cold winter. People are like, oh, no one's gonna come. I show up, and there's literally like, you know, 200, over 250 students just waiting outside, like, we're ready to march. And I was pumped up.
You're like, fearless leader.
But then also there's a right way to go about it. It's a peaceful rally. And what was most, I think, empowering about that experience, Tiffany, was when we showed up, there were local white residents of the town that said, hey, we are here to support you. We're gonna march with you. Because this incident, it doesn't reflect the entire community. So it was a Hmong student-led march, but it was a multicultural coalition. And we had young folks, we had people brought their babies on strollers on the sidewalk in the snow saying, you know, no peace, no justice, no peace, you know? So that was inspiring.
That is inspiring, and for you to be out there with them, and
Right.
it was cold. Actually, I think means way more,
Right.
because they're willing to endure, the elements to really make the statement that they were looking for,
Right.
in a peaceful way.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's one thing you do, and then you have all these other hats, and you do them all at the same time.
I do.
So I said we were going to try to prioritize, like, which
Sure.
hat did you want to talk about next? And I was really moved mostly because I've had you perform for some other things, and I, like you said, you're the first, paid Hmong comedian,
Yeah.
and you were talking about, using, entertainment, educational entertainment. So we want to speak a little bit how you use comedy in basically so many different ways.
Sure. Growing up, so I went to the St. Paul Public Schools, and I was that typical Hmong kid, that refugee kid that would go to school and try to fit in, but couldn't fit in because we weren't American enough,
Exactly.
right? We didn't have the features that was, sort of Minnesota American, like the blonde hair, blue eyes. Then we came home. A lot of my friends and my peers, even myself, we weren't Hmong enough for our parents. Oh, you're losing the culture. You don't know your language.
Right. You're like too acculturated to be Hmong, but you're too Hmong to be American.
Right. So you caught between two worlds. And what do? You resort to, you hang out with other Hmong people who can relate.
Right.
But so growing up, and this is just my friends and I, and this is my story too, we're nothing but a bunch of like refugee wannabes, right?
Right.
But because we look alike, talk alike, and walk alike, ooh, to those who don't understand, hey, they're in a gang. Ooh, that's an Asian gang. We're like, wait a minute, right?
You're like, we're just a whole bunch of Asian kids together.
Right. So then a lot of my friends resorted. They're like, okay,
if they're already calling us that,
we
might
might
as well be it.
Yeah, it's sort of like, okay, monkey see, monkey do. And a lot of my friends did resort to that lifestyle, and some of them, I started seeing my friends like drop out of middle school and high school. I'm like, what?
Bummer.
These are like some of my best friends, and like started doing things, breaking the law, like, and so that was really troublesome for me to see that.
Right, so what kept you from doing that and falling where you are, which is exceptional, I would say.
And so, I struggled with that identity. And so, after a while, I was that one kid that broke out of my comfort zone. And I sit with the black students and the white students. And, like when you put yourself in an uncomfortable position, you start to, a different kind of mode of thinking goes on, and you learn different things.
Right.
And I share about like the first, like one of my first white friends who I brought home. And I'm thinking, oh, I'm uncomfortable, he's uncomfortable.
We're all
I'm thinking,
uncomfortable.
cool, well, let's just give it a try. And I remember he came home and my mom's like, oh, and my first white friend, blonde hair, blue eyes, is like, what'd she say? Right? I'm like, oh, she just said sit down. I was supposed to give you something to drink because you're my guest.
Right.
And he turns to me and says, oh, cool, like what she's saying and stuff, right? And I'm like, oh yeah, I speak two languages, right? I have one foot in each culture. I can navigate two worlds.
Right.
So I saw myself not being Hmong American as an advantage or something, not as a disadvantage or something to be ashamed of, embarrassed about, but an advantage, and that I can navigate two worlds.
Right.
And so that fundamental way of thinking made me just look at the world in a whole different way.
Like the game changer when you realized.
It was my game changer.
Good.
I was like, oh man, this is gonna be cool. Like I used to be ashamed. I used to be called Rice Patty, right?
Right.
Now I wear a shirt for my show that says "Got Rice."
I have one. I love it. And I used to wear it when I went to St. Paul, and the students all knew who you were.
Yeah.
They'd see the Got Rice shirt, and they'd be like, Tou Ger,
Yeah. And now, so I use comedy now. And so growing up, like, how do you deal with that? If you look at the comedian greats like Eddie Murphy, right? Chris Rock and Richard Pryor, they grew up in the slums, and instead of like, making excuses for themselves, they say, we're gonna tell our story, and we're gonna charge America millions of dollars to tell it,
Right.
And so that's the genius of America, is that, how do you tell your story? And I was not gonna let someone else tell my Hmong American story.
Exactly.
Yeah, so when I started in college, I started traveling, performing. I was that door-to-door comic. I'm like, yo, let me tell y'all a joke about my, People are like, who are you? I'm like, yeah, I'm Hmong American. And after a while, it started to catch on. My degree is actually in political science.
Right, and from, I think, Concordia, no?
Carleton College.
Oh, Carleton, I was so close.
But when I started, people were like, so what do you want to do? Like some of my friends were like, oh, pre-law or pre-med. And I actually told my career counselor in high school, I said, I want to go and inspire people.
Right.
And that wasn't an official job title at the time, so she said, oh, you want to be an inspirer. Because the logic was, if teachers teach, if you inspirers, inspire. I was like, okay, that's what I want.
And you later learned, like, maybe that's the motivational speaker, right? Like, there's a real word for that.
Right.
But that worked for them, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So you took comedy into motivational speaking, like they kind of coincide for you sometimes.
They do. Because if we can laugh together, we can talk about anything, right?
Well, precisely.
And especially the topics that I talk about. I'm talking about racism, you know, diversity, discrimination, like, you know, sexism. So these are hot button issues that a lot of people, oh, we don't want to be trained on that. So now when I talk about it, I say, don't come listen to a lecture on racism or culture. I say, come and experience a performance on, you know, cultural journeys, because we all have our own journeys.
And it helps them kind of take down that wall and be more receptive.
So I don't sell myself like as a lecturer, but as a cultural entertainer or a comedian or a rap artist, and then it kind of breaks down. So, because, you know, people's walls go up. They get defensive when you talk. No, nobody wants to be trained on racism, you know. But it's a conversation that we all need to have.
Everybody needs to have.
And so laughter helps.
Laughter does help.
I poked fun of the first time I saw a white person, blonde hair, blue eyes, like, whoa, you know.
And how was that, by the way?
It was scary. And I'm glad he asked. Like, a lot of kids, growing up, a lot of kids call us the flat-nosed Asian boy, right? Oh, flat-nosed China boy, go back to your country. Yeah.
Oh my
I mean, I would tell the kids now, like, I actually reenact some of that stuff.
Like that's got to be a good part of your comedy, right?
Yeah, so I do this. So imagine me with like 300 elementary kids, and I'll say, oh, when we were little, my favorite one is Chinese, Japanese, dirty knees, right? And they kind of go, whoa. But I say, now I tell all the kids, man, if I knew magic back then like Harry Potter, I take out my chopstick wand and I cast a spell right then and there. You may think you're clever, but may your eyes be stuck like that forever. And these little Asian
they
kids
probably love it.
They love it. They're like, ooh, I'm gonna give each you guys a chopstick in your backpack.
And they're like, watch me tomorrow. Yes. I'm gonna be the coolest little Asian kid.
It's about helping them to be comfortable with their cultural identities. Yeah, and I also do like storytelling with dragons and puppets, and so it's like a one-man show. I do 8 different characters. I tell my life story, but then I also talk about like the reality of America, you know, of racism, and again, what it means. I share stories about my friends who did get caught up in the gang juvenile justice system, and who aren't alive today because they were involved in drive-bys, and so there's a reality check there as well.
Exactly.
And also there's it also falls along the line of bullying.
Exactly.
Because a lot of young people, and usually after my show, when I first started, I would go to schools in the inner city, but then I'd get invited to these towns in the middle of nowhere, where there is like 2 or 3 people of color, and I'm like, oh, why would they invite me? And it wasn't until later I realized this is where some of these kids don't have that exposure to diversity, right? But they can also relate too, because I did a show in Bemidji, Minnesota. This girl comes up and says, Tou, I can relate to your story of being picked on. And she got real quiet and she said, you know, I'm the first female wrestler in the district. And all the guys make fun of me because I wrestle, and all the girls make fun of me because I wrestle. And I'm caught between 2 worlds. I had a blonde-haired, blue-eyed junior in high school named Jason in Kansas come up to me and said, I could relate to your story because they don't call me the Asian names that they call you, but they call me trailer park trash. They call me a redneck and they tease my accent. And I realized for every kid who's been picked on, spat at, beat up, they can relate. So it's all about, it comes down to, the original name that I use for my show is called Respectism, the opposite of racism.
I love that.
So it's been a fun journey. I started in 95, 94.
Okay, I've been doing this for a while.
So yes, so I've hit 45 states.
45, what's up with the other 5?
The other 5 hasn't called me, but Alaska just called, so I'm hoping to go there next year. But over like, and my audience have been anywhere from like 5 people to 5,000 people.
And obviously you have to tailor them a little bit. Is there a difference when you're working with like a smaller group than those humongous groups? What do you do to kind of cater differently to the masses, I guess?
Because I come from a Hmong culture. Oral history, storytelling is a huge part of our culture. So I think it's really about taking bits and pieces from my life story that can connect with folks. And my favorite audience is I started performing for young kids, and that's why I share folk tales, and we have stories of the dragons living under the water and princesses, and so I reenact some of that stuff with a life lesson. But with the young people, like teenagers, oh, they're too cool to listen to puppets, right? So I gotta throw in some rap songs. I got yo, yo, you know, I start going into some rhymes. I'm like, oh, so instead of giving a lecture, I can give a 20-minute lecture in like a 3-minute rap. you know, with the message.
Kind of just meet them where they're at, tailor it to whatever group you're with.
Right, and so, and then for the adults, of course, there's got to be the meat and bones in the message. And so, depending on the audience, what's fun about some of these audiences, sometimes I'll have a multi-generational audience and a multicultural audience.
Nice.
So I'm fluent in Hmong, so I do the Hmong jokes.
Oh,
the Hmong kids get it. They laugh first and all the non-Hmong kids like, oh, what do you say, what do you say?
Right, and then you like redo the joke and then they get
and then I do it in English, and then you know sometimes things don't get translated.
No, they really don't.
So then they do it in English, the Hmong kids are laughing again because it gets lost in the translation.
Right, and they get it like twice.
Right.
Like, it's not as funny, but you still get the thing.
Yeah. So I think just over time, my career like has just evolved. I kind of learned like what works with certain audiences.
Right.
I do a show every year at the State Fair. I host a show out there it used to be called Global Hot Dish. Now it's called Big Wow.
Why the change? Any big reason for the
difference?
It's
just corporate decisions or whatever.
Nice. Okay.
But
Good
then we also do a show at the Minnesota History Center. So there's certain venues that I go back to every year.
And people can find you annually.
Right. Yep. So.
All right. Well, that's a lot. So, and we were talking about before, you know, when you were more just focused on the motivational speaking, you were, you know, sometimes in, 5, 7 different states in the same week.
Right.
And now you're a little more centralized.
Yes.
Probably, I'll hint at, after marriage.
Yeah.
The wife was probably like, I need you to be home more, your beautiful wife. So what are you doing now that has you a little more centralized, able to stay home more, and where can people find you?
Right.
To get in contact with you.
A lot of people used to know me by my website, GoHmongBoy.com.
Right.
But because I'm married now, I can't be like Hmong boy anymore. I'm a Hmong man now, right?
Right.
So I'm married to the beautiful Mrs. Minnesota 2013, Mrs. Tou Ger Bennet Xiong.
Yes.
Which is a friend of yours.
And she'll be on in the future. She gets her own segment.
So so I think as partners, we just decided that hey, it's a lifestyle change, and I want to be closer to home more, and also I still travel. I was just in Seattle 2 weeks ago. Yeah, so nice. I still do gigs here and there, but I don't travel as much as I used to. But I used to. Yeah, there was a time when.
And which one of the many gigs did you do there? Were you at like a school or a corporate?
I was at an educational conference where there were it's for Southeast Asian youth, Lao, Cambodian, Vietnamese, Tibetan, and like a multi Southeast Asian groups coming to talk about the importance of education. So yeah, so I still do some of those jokes. There are some folks who saw me like in 3rd or 4th grade who are now in college, and yeah, they're like, hey, you're that. I have this song. I don't know if I say it, people will recognize, but in my show, I used to have this song called "Go Hmong Boy, Go Hmong Boy, Go Hmong Boy, Go Hmong Boy." Yeah, they'll sing it.
Oh, that's funny when
it's catchy.
They
go, bite that spicy egg, grow Hmong Boy. Yeah.
So, oh my goodness, too. Now I have to go like YouTube this and find you.
You got YouTube Tou Ger Xiong.
And then I can sing it next time you come on.
Yeah. And then I actually make the kids dance with me, and the teachers do their dance.
And they love it, I bet.
Well, it's about bridging the cultures and the generations. So
it's
I'm all about the energy, man.
You are phenomenal. Yes. I think people thought I paid you at my wedding. Tou was at my wedding. And I think he kind of just rallied the troops around the entertainment. Yeah, so I think I'm pretty convinced my family thought you were like a paid entertainer.
Oh, it's funny you mentioned that. My wife and I, Andrew and I, we are doing more weddings now.
You are?
We can say we are professional wedding crashers.
I would pay for that.
We actually got paid recently to go to this wedding. This couple was like, we need someone to like hype the energy.
Right.
And through word of mouth, some people.
Did they see like my wedding video? No.
they saw another wedding video.
That is so funny.
And they're like, oh, let's get them there. She sings. He does like Elvis impersonations.
You
James
do.
Brown. Yeah.
You've done Asian James Brown. Yeah. And I love it.
I was on America's Got Talent.
You were.
Yeah,
and
so
it
you
was
Google
awesome,
Asian
by the way.
James Brown on America's Got Talent. And and that was.
So you actually are getting paid to do that now?
Yes.
Because, I think people thought you were paid at my wedding, and I'm like, well, thankfully I didn't have to pay for that.
Yes.
They're just good friends and
free
awesome.
Anytime. Anytime.
So I am thankful for that. That's so funny. Okay,
Yeah.
I'm glad we get to do these interviews because I learn something new every time.
Yes.
And entertaining, comedy, I want to make sure we checked kind of everything. Oh, how do you manage it though? Because at different stages in your life, you have managed your life much differently.
Right. You know, it's weird because when you go into a career like this, right, you say, no one said, there isn't really a class you can take on how to be a motivational speaker, right? Or how to manage it. So when I first started, they'd say, hey, do you have an invoice? Do you have a contract? Like, what's that? Do you have a card? I'm like, no, right? can you send us a bill? I'm like, so you learn as you go. And I've been very fortunate, Tiffany,
Right.
that over the years I've had some mentors who said, Tou, you know, you have a lot of talent. You should charge a little more, or this is how you get a contract together. And it's one of those professions where I'm not, each one of our stories is unique. So no one motivational speaker can duplicate another.
Right,
Because
do it
we
the
all
same
have
as
our
someone
life
else.
story.
Okay.
And so I've been so fortunate that I've had some mentors. And along the way, I've kind of learned to market myself, the business side of it. And so there was a time when I had a full-time staff that did all my bookings for me. But now I've gotten to the point where I can manage myself. And now I can kind of pick and choose what gigs I want to do. And
Which
you know,
is nice.
yeah, and there's those groups that are like, hey, we sell, you know, we'll like sell egg rolls to pay for you. I'm like, no, I don't want, just study and do your homework. I'll come and do, you know, something for a reduced fee because that's where the passion is. And the reward is in the journey itself. Because you meet so many young people and adults, and they come up and you realize that my message in my entire, like, I think 17, 18 years of traveling, that my message has been, as much as we are different, we are alike.
Because we are.
Right. And we don't have any other choice but to learn to get along and celebrate these. We celebrate our differences, we celebrate our similarities.
Well, you kind of beat me to it. I was like, is there one thing, one like ultimate message? And you kind of beat me to it, because that's probably it. You know, as much as we are different, we are alike. And that's really important. In, you know, the space that I think our communities are in right now. You know, there's some political and racial turmoil really taking place. And, you know, we kind of, you know, didn't get to it as much this time, but in that it sounds like you strategically chose to have, you know, more of a peaceful rally than a protest, given the state of affairs in our country. And I think that was, you know, a really strategically beautiful choice, and the way that you mentor those students to make that choice and you know rally in that way. So hopefully, you know, people will follow your Facebook and tell them the name specifically that they can find you on your Facebook.
Okay, so if you Google Tou Ger Xiong, which is so common, people are like, what does that mean? It means Bob, because it's as common as Bob. But I'm the only Tou Ger Bennet Xiong.
Right, that hyphenated name with no hyphen, it's just
I'm the only Tou Ger Bennet Xiong in the world.
In the whole world.
Yes, because my wife and I combined last names. So that's where they can keep up to date on what I'm doing and where my travels are. And sometimes what's great is that I'll bring my wife along, because then she adds and she throws in her jokes, and they're like, oh, so she only adds to what I do, because the whole message has been, you know, you don't judge by color of the skin. You know? And I didn't plan on meeting, you know, such a beautiful lady. So, yeah. So,
Well, to wrap up, I'm biracial, and I have, you know, my own niche, and I really feel, you know, talking about seeing it as an advantage that you are kind of a mediator between cultures at all times. And I feel that's an advantage for myself always too. But you and Andrea are both, you know, multicultural in your own right, and you had just the cutest little name. I have to put it out there, mostly because you're a comedian and it makes sense that you would come up with this funny phrase. But share your ethnicities and what your child, because I know you're gonna have, well, if you had your way, you'd have 10 children. I don't know if Andrea's necessarily on board with that many, but what would your children be?
So I tell them, because you know, Andrea is comes from a mixed, you know, background. My mother-in-law is, so her dad is Native American, Black. Mother-in-law is Norwegian, and I'm Asian. So that's Black, Native, Black, Norwegian, Asian. We're gonna make the first Native Norblasian baby.
Native Norblasian baby. And you heard it here first, so keep that in mind. So we want to thank Tou for his time, because he is amazing, and I'm pretty sure we'll have him back, and we will have his wife, Andrea, on in the future, because she also has an amazing talent and story to share of her own in her own right. So we just want to thank you for your time. This was our local celebrity section, and as we said, Tou isn't just local, he's international, and we're just blessed to have him here locally to advocate for our communities. You can follow us on Twitter at Mrs. Tiffany Shaw, or on Facebook at ShawTalk, as well as on Instagram. So find us any of those places. Also right here on your local Northwest Community Cable Television, and online. Look for our new website coming up here in 2 weeks. You can find us at ShawTalk.com.